Welcome back, guys. Episode 3 is a bit different. We actually accidentally got into a real deep D&M, so we go quite far into our personal feelings in this one, and it's more friendship-based than entrepreneurial-based, I suppose, but we both really love it and think it's a nice, honest reflection of us, and we hope you enjoy.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for listening.
We've decided to include you in our weekly catch-ups. Every time we talk to each other, we feel so inspired and motivated, and we're really hoping to evoke that in you too.
Exactly. And even after 16 years of friendship and from different countries, every single time we talk, I am always reminded that I'm not alone in my journey.
And that as we walk the twists and turns of the creative path, the tangents always become relevant. Hello?
Hi!
Woo!
We're back!
Welcome back!
Episode 3!
Hello to everyone who has joined us after listening to episode 1 and 2. Thank you for your dedication.
I'm at my nana's house. She has had an accident and broken her wrist and hurt her arm, so I've got the 5-hour train up here and hanging out with Nana, help her with some stuff. So
She's such a trooper.
she's tough as. She drove me here and she's got a broken wrist and she's driving. And I said, do you want me to drive? And then she's like, oh, no.
I mean, you got your spunk from somewhere.
Yeah, I know. But she made dinner. She made lunch and dinner. Wouldn't let me in the kitchen.
And you're there to look after her and she's actually looking after you.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, okay. No, it's good. So I'm going to be here for a week and then Erin's going to come join us too. So I figured we'll have a different background and it's all vintagey. So
Love it.
it's kind of like a cool set without meaning
Yeah, I
it.
feel like we've kind of accidentally gone 80s vibes today. I'm always slightly horrified when people say 80s is vintage, having been, born in the 80s. Like, we're both 80s babies, so that damages my ego a little bit. But look, we're embracing it today. It wasn't intentional, but here we are.
80s babies, vintage vibes. Woohoo! I know. I was talking to my nana about what you do, and I was saying that you do vintage inspired tutorials, and then I remembered what we were talking about last week about how when my niece was saying, oh, the Spice Girls are vintage, and I thought, oh no, I'm doing that to her right now. So I was like, it's probably like, I tried to backpedal. I was like, it's probably actually things you used to wear. Anyway.
That's the biggest compliment, though.
She loved your photos.
Aw, that's lovely. Anytime anyone in their 80s says to me, that's exactly how I used to do my hair or my makeup, or I wore outfits like this, I'm like, yes, I nailed it.
Yes. Yeah, I got it right. Woo!
And I haven't insulted them. That's
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Oh, man.
Well, this week we were just having a little pre-recording discussion about what we're going to talk about. So I was thinking, would you like to introduce the main ideas we're going to talk about before we go off on our tangents as like a little intro to the episode?
Yeah, okay. So, guys, we want to talk about relationships with different people in your life. So, and how that relates back to you being a creative. Because obviously not everyone you encounter is going to be an amazing creative spirit. Like, we connect so well and understand each other so well, but our partners are really different to us. Obviously, you have friends and family who might not understand your creative journey and why it has its twists and turns. So how do you sort of deal with the conversations that you have with those people? And what do they bring as well? Instead of just seeing it as like they don't understand us, like what do they bring? So we're going to have to sort of touch on that stuff today, and hopefully it is helpful and of interest.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat about it because I think there's so many layers to this that I've learned over my life, my short adult life, let's say, of experience with different partners. And I think that some of the things I got taught to believe aren't true. Like, for example, I thought that I had to be with another artist or I thought that I had to be with someone who was in the same industry as me, or like, another entrepreneur because I'm going to be working at the kitchen table all night or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I've come to realize that those things, I don't think there's any rules for a start, but what I've learned is the most important thing is actually polarity. And once I understood that, I was like, oh, this is so different than anything I expected, but it actually makes it so much easier. And it's interesting because you and I have very similar personalities and our partners have very similar personalities. Yeah. And I think both of us, it works really well. So I think there's something to be said for the whole opposites attract thing. But but that can be taken the wrong way as well. You know, it's got to be in the right way. You've got to be different in the right way. So
Absolutely,
it'd be good to get into
I
that.
think with anything, communication is key. I think once you've got communication down pat, and that includes us as well. It's not like because we're creative, we're perfect and someone else has to match up to us. We all can do better on a communication front.
And, you know, over the years, I've always heard these things and thought, yep, that makes sense. But it's like, but how? So if we can give some little tidbits of like things that have worked for us and actually how to apply them, I think that's going to be really helpful for hopefully for others. Like, for example, just last night, I was irritated with Erin, and we don't argue much, but I could feel it building in me. And there was a couple of little things that were annoying me, and I didn't want to say them because I didn't want to cause us, you know, cause conflict or argue or ruin the fun or whatever. So they just were festering. Anyway, we had a bit of a moment on the couch where it was so minuscule, really, but it's always the small things, isn't it? So she was basically asking me about my plans to come up to visit my nana. But I felt like she was interrogating me. Mm-hmm. So she was like asking lots of questions over and over again, like all different questions. And I just wanted to watch my true crime show. So I was annoyed because she's interrupting me when I'm trying to watch something. But when I interrupt her and she tries to watch something, she's a bit snappy with me, and I never am snappy. So I was feeling irritated. So there's a few layers here. Anyway, it all kind of blew up because I don't know why, but all of a sudden we're fighting and like having an issue. And so I sat down and I wrote a little list in my phone, dot points of things that I know I haven't vocalized that I have been thinking about, because I thought I can't control what she does or doesn't do, but I know what I need to say that I haven't said. So I just started with that and I texted it to her. It was like a notes thing. And I started it with, actually, I should read it to you. This is hilarious.
Okay, go for it.
This is funny. I said, we need to talk about some things that have hurt my feelings. I want to be open and happy and not let things build up. But I am too nervous as your temperament has been different lately, so I'm not feeling comfortable. Here are the things that I'd like to discuss when you're ready. This is me trying to do the right thing. Thank you.
I love that. Because it's like not aggressive. Like you've gone in such a, like the whole point of you wanting to talk is to better things, not to like point the finger and make it all about her. I really like that approach.
Yes. So anyway, I sent the 4 things and then she came to bed and we talked about them and it was totally fine and it worked out really well. So, and we were laughing afterwards. She was like, thank you so much for doing that. And like, I'm glad we talked. I was like, same, because before we'd spoken, she came in to brush her teeth and I was in the shower and it was really awkward. It was like complete silence. So normally the door's open and we just do whatever. I shut the door and she knocked on the door. Can I brush my teeth? And I was like, yes. And I was like, silent. Anyway, after we spoke, she was like, well, I'm glad we talked. I was like, me too, because that was an awkward shower. She was like, yeah, the less of those awkward teeth brushing sessions we can have, the better.
Yeah, that's a really great example of like, it's usually not one-sided, is it? Like we can so intensely feel the emotions and the lack of communication from our perspective, obviously. But if something is off, you're both going to be feeling off. So coming at it and thinking like open communication that is back and forth, like, yes, obviously each person needs the opportunity to openly share their feelings and not have the other person turn it back on them or cut them off or invalidate their feelings. But I do think it has to be a back and forth. Like a conversation is never one way. So if you're going to go out there and say to someone like, I'm not happy with X, Y, and Z, you also have to be willing to hear what they say back to you, you know? And
that's right.
It always turns out, well, at least my experience is, the more I try to not take things personally, because you're in a relationship with someone that loves you, hopefully. So they don't actually want to hurt you. They're just feeling hurt. So if you can just try and put your emotional turmoil aside for a second and have a genuine conversation, remembering that this is a good person in front of you, it usually turns out pretty well.
And if you're both doing that, then it will turn out well. And it always does. And if the partner you have doesn't do that, you need to leave. That's my advice. If they're not trying to understand you, but they're trying to win, get out of there. And I, you know what? These are a few little things that have helped me. They're like sentences that I've been practicing saying So I've struggled with being a proper listener. Like I, in the past, wouldn't listen properly, as we've talked about. Now I try to listen properly. And I think this is like a practical thing that has helped me. When I hear that, like listen properly, I didn't really know what it meant because I wasn't good at it, right? So this is what I've started doing. I've started verbally saying, I want to understand what you're thinking, or like I want to know what you're feeling. I want to understand how you got there. That one helps me heaps. Like I want to understand you. And then also I say, I believe you. That one helps me with my own brain so much. Like, because I'm so used to not believing people or questioning them or thinking I'm being manipulated or whatever, lied to, or just not trusting people's motives or whatever. So that's my own trauma. But what I say is I believe you, and it helps me to try to actually do that. So then it's like, okay, if I believe that, then how do I react? So when they say something, if I actually just believe them, then what would my response be, rather than assuming they're trying to lie to me? You know what I mean? So stuff like that. I've little trigger sentences now that help me with my communication with her a lot. And there's one other one. It was, this one I actually worked out with Thomas and Ben. So me and Thomas, who we spoke about last episode, he's the playwright that I love. He visited, by the way. It was the best. His partner is Ben. So Ben and I used to argue a lot, and neither of us wanted to argue. We both loved Thomas more than anything on the earth. We actually really like each other, and we couldn't understand what was happening. And we kept saying, like, we know that we're triggering each other, but we don't know how to fix this. And so it was really frustrating because every time we'd hang out, we'd end up arguing, which is the last thing either of us wanted. So annoying. Anyway, we figured out a hack one day. I said I really didn't want to fight with him again, and I knew it was stressing Thomas out. And we'd get in, basically we were both raised in the same Christian cult. So we'd get into these philosophical debates, and our conversations would always take a real sharp, quick, deep dive into like trauma. And so it became really heavy and intense. And it wasn't like we were fighting with each other necessarily. Like it was just, we just go into like these really annoying conversations. And then because it was like real heavy stuff, we'd both take things the wrong way. And then all of a sudden we're both crying, you know, just annoying as. So one day we said to each other, we didn't know how to deal with it. And we thought maybe we just shouldn't hang out. Maybe that's the answer. But then after Jackie died, I was reassessing things, and I thought I need to do something differently. I need to be accountable for me and try and fix this. What I've noticed with me is a pattern where I hear things the way I think I hear it, but it isn't necessarily the way that the person means it. So I need to think to myself, maybe I'm wrong. And now that I've started thinking maybe I'm wrong, that opens up the ability to communicate with the other person. So first I tell myself maybe I'm wrong. Then I actually listen to them. Then this is the next bit. I say to them, what I'm hearing you say is this. Not what you, like, not even like you said this to me, because it still risks an attack. You know what I mean? So what I say is, what I'm hearing is blah, 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 blah. So then it's on me and how I've heard it. And it works so well. It's like the best hack. Now we never argue ever. Now we get along great. We were dancing all weekend when they visited. We had the best time.
Yay. Oh, that's so good. I'm really happy for you.
Yeah, well, like 85% of the time, or 90% when there's conflict, 100 even, one of us is hearing something that we don't mean.
Yeah, I can really, really relate to this. When you were explaining it, I had like the same aha thing, because I've been trying to do the same thing, because I think I expect sometimes, because of things that have happened to me in the past, when I hear certain keywords or I see even certain facial expressions and body language, I immediately think I'm going to be encountering the same situation. And so I start preparing myself for that, as opposed to trusting A, that I've made a better choice in who I surround myself with, but also B, that I have a partner who has already demonstrated repeatedly that they love me and care about me and don't mean me any harm in either a physical or emotional sense, you know? So if I know that to be true, if I think that they're suddenly doing that, maybe it's a safe space for me to try and find out whether that's actually the case, you know what I mean? Whereas if I'm already in a dangerous situation, they've proved that they're doing the wrong thing, then there's a much higher chance that they are actually meaning some sort of harm to me, whether that's emotionally, verbally, physically, whatever. So I know that Val is not trying to hurt me. And we've also got a language barrier. And there are times where I try and make the point of, this is how it's coming across to me. This is how it's making me feel. And he'll be like, but I don't mean it that way. So why are you insisting on interpreting it that way when I have explained to you repeatedly that that's not what I'm trying to say? Like, give me a break. English is my second language. And I'm like, oh yeah. And what I'm hearing is, I don't care about how you feel, instead of my partner doesn't want to hurt me and I've just misinterpreted what he said. Like, actually, in that situation, I'm wrong.
Yes. Next time he's saying that to you, like, I don't mean it that way, say out loud, I believe you.
Try that.
And let me know. It is amazing. I've been doing it lately.
Yeah.
And it helps them, obviously feels good for them. But also, I want to know how it makes you feel, because for me, it's immediately snaps me out of that triggered feeling. And it forces me to go, okay, I'm in a new situation. I do believe this person because I've seen their actions. I just need to, this is a me thing, It's really powerful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely going to try that, because sometimes even when you know what you need to be working on, it's really good to have these little tools, because sometimes I feel like there's almost like two parts of me. Like, there's the part who's struggling to get out of the triggered side of things. And then there's the part who's, done therapy and a lot of self-help stuff and is like, come on, you can do better.
Yeah, it's like your brain understands it, but your body hasn't learnt it yet. It's like not a habit. Or like, it's like you can understand how to film something, but physically doing it are two different things. remembering to put a battery in doesn't come into the textbook, does
it? Are we referring to your microphone dramas? Oh, man.
Remembering to charge everything. There's some things that, you just have to physically do. And I think, this isn't, you actually helped me with this a lot. And one time in particular was, remember I had that issue with one of Erin's friends, and I was very triggered by her and was nervous to see her. And I didn't know how to manage it. And you said to me, you just need to have a mantra. Maybe try a mantra, you said. You didn't say you need to. You said try a mantra. And you told me to try, when I saw her, thinking to myself, I don't need anything from you. I did it because it finally happened. We crossed paths and it was great. It helped so much. So, because in my own self, I was going, I don't need anything from you, because I was afraid I was going to be too nice and try to overcompensate and be fake and all that. And I didn't do it. I actually did. It helped so much.
A pleasure.
So thank you.
Yeah. Because it's like, people are existing. Like, I don't, with people talk about empaths so much. And I'm like, after a lot of the sort of I want to say personal growth journey that I've done in the last sort of 5-6 years, I'm not sure that I really believe in the concept of an empath anymore, because I think it might just be trauma and not having enough boundaries. But I think something that's really hit me in the last few years is that I don't have to be in the same emotional space as those people around me. If my partner wakes up in a bad mood, if my colleague at work is stressed, I don't also have to become stressed. If I woke up and I'm in a really good mood, they can be existing in their emotional state, and I'm allowed to have my own emotional state. And realistically, if I am feeling solid in myself and I have good personal boundaries, nothing that they do, unless they physically come over and shake me or something, nothing they do is going to change my emotional state unless I let it. So it's very powerful to realize that, because I used to think I had no control, like everyone was just pulling me everywhere. And I'm the only person who can deal with that boundary crossing. I've got to say no. I've got to say no to them, but also to myself. Like, no, don't go there.
Yeah. This was a huge thing for me too, because taking responsibility for yourself sounds like a negative and like it's like hard work or whatever, but it has both sides. And this is the positive side. Once you realize that you're in complete control of what you feel, it goes every which way. So you're in control of all of your actions. And I remember when I first was in therapy, they were talking about anger to me, and they said anger is always a choice. I did not believe my psychologist. I was like, no, because I truly believe that someone makes you angry and you react, because that's what I'd always experienced. And I'd always been blamed for their anger because I'd made them do it. You know what I mean? So I had believed that, but also then had believed it about myself. So I was like, well, anger just happens and you have no control over it. And it took me a while to work through that. And it was actually the holistic psychologist who said, you're not responsible for other people's feelings. And then my psychologist told me, you know, adults are allowed to be and can be disappointed. So even if you acting a certain, first of all, we have no control over other people's feelings. So if someone's in a bad mood, it's actually got nothing to do with us. And even if it does, we still don't need to be drawn into the drama, because adults are allowed to and should manage their own feelings. So we're not responsible for their feelings, and we're not in charge. And it's actually a form of control. And when she said that, I was like, because the last thing I want to do is be controlling others. And she said, what you're actually doing is trying to control everyone, and you're not letting people have their own feelings. And it's really, really unhealthy. And I was like, oh my God. Amazing revelation.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I love talking to you. Obviously we're friends, but I find we so often are on parallel journeys when it comes to our personal growth and what we're trying to work on in ourselves. Because the same babes, like realizing that if someone, because I used to do this thing, it's like if I think, and it still comes up now and then, but I'm much more aware of it now when it's happening rather than seeing it in retrospect. This feeling of like, oh, I think this person might be upset with me. They think I've done something wrong. They're in a bad mood. It must be my fault. Not everything is about me.
Yes.
First of all.
Yeah.
And chasing them around and being like, what did I do? How can I fix it? If they're just having a really bad day or they've got something else going on that they're not ready to discuss yet, I'm just being incredibly fucking annoying and making it all about myself. And secondly, they are an adult.
They're not obliged. They're not obliged to
Absolutely,
tell you.
That's their business.
And even if, and if they say it's not, you just got to take them at their word, because you want to be around people who are actually honest.
And if they're an adult, if it is you, if you have done something wrong and you genuinely don't know what it is, then it is their responsibility to communicate that with you. It is not your job to guess. That's childish behavior. If they are making you play a guessing game and giving you the silent punishment treatment, that is bullshit. They need to grow up. And so do you. If you're chasing them around,
it's not,
exactly.
It's not your fault.
You have to grow up too and learn not to buy into it.
Yeah. You know, this was interesting, and this is a personal thing, so we can go back and delete this if you don't want this in here. But when your dad died, I really struggled with, because I've been obviously going through or learning all this at the same time you have over the last few years. And I know during that time we weren't talking as much, but we still talked, and whenever we did, it was really real. So I knew that you were on the same path, and you've always been really clear with me, which I really appreciate. But I know that you have struggled with it as well in the past. So when your dad passed away, I wanted to be at the funeral, but I also was a bit broke, but I was going to make it work. But my thinking was, I don't want you, like, you're someone I want in my life forever, and you're one of my best friends, even though we weren't talking that much back then. It's always been the case. And so I knew that over the long term of our friendship, I didn't want you to look back and go, she didn't come, so I was coming. Like I made that decision because it's important. I can't relate to it. I haven't lost a parent, so I can't imagine what you're going through, but I knew that that's what I felt. So that's how I approached it, which was what I thought was the right thing. So I said, I'm going to come. Then you said, you don't have to if it's too expensive. And I thought, oh, that's nice. It is expensive. In all honesty, I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. But then I was like, oh, maybe I can make it work. It's important. These things matter. Then you said, if I'm being honest, it's a lot going on. And to have people coming in to stay, I feel like pressure to have to entertain everyone. It might be easier if you don't come for me. And I was like, okay. In that moment, I thought to myself, I need to take you at your word and believe you. You might just be trying to make me feel better because you know I didn't have much money at the time. But at the end of the day, you said that, so I believed you. And that I left it at that, and I never brought it up again. And then months later, you brought it up to me and said how much it meant to you that I actually listened to you. And I was like, that is such a powerful example for me of making sure that you take people at face value, because you don't know where they're at their journey either. So and it's so much simpler than trying to work out like what people mean. Just what they say is all you have to work with, and like what they do is all you have to judge them by. So it takes away all of the noise. But I thought that example with us was like, we've always had really healthy communication. So I knew that you were probably being honest with me, but it was like kind of like the seal on the deal for me. I was like, we're both past that now. Like, we actually can trust each other to say what we need without any fear. And I think it's only grown from then, which has been really beautiful. And it's now like awesome. Like we were saying last week, this has been great. We don't feel any pressure. Like even today, I knew I could say, actually, I don't want to record today because I'm at my nan's, and you wouldn't be mad at me. Like, and it's cool. And I think that's the takeaway, is once you get past that hump, for those of you listening who are working through this, know that not only does it get easier to do, like anything when you practice it, but also the people around you, your life becomes so much more genuine and connected and easier to manage. And the people around you are way better to deal with. Way less drama.
It's true. Is like, and from my side of things, yes. I mean, you've already said it, but that really meant a lot to me, because one of my sort of trauma responses is to be a people pleaser, and grief pulls things up from deep inside you that you might think you've got a handle on. And my people pleasing was so hardcore during that time. And there's a big thing that happens with grief where you don't react how you think you're going to react. Grief, I think it's different for different people, but also you will be shocked. Like you think you're going to cry, or you think you're never going to laugh, or you think you won't smile, or you think you won't forget that the person has passed away briefly when you're discussing things with people. And then you have this like, oh my God, does that person think that I don't care? Or did I act really weird? Or are people going to think that I'm being inappropriate? Like, there's so much going on top of the fact that you are missing this person and whatever is entailed with that relationship as well. Obviously, it depends who the person is that passed away. But what I was worried about as your friend, knowing that what your personal circumstances were at that time, and that you were such a good friend, and that you would put yourself in a more difficult situation in order to support me, I knew that. It was stressing me out, and I couldn't put that aside. And I knew if you came, that then I would try and look after you when I actually didn't have the emotional energy to do that. Exactly. And so the fact that you listened to me, and even though you said like, but you don't need to look after me, I was like, but I won't be able to stop myself, because at the moment I can't, I'm too all over the place. And it meant so much. And I remember I had another friend come who surprised me, and I only knew like 24 hours before or something. I can't remember, but when I found out they were coming, then I was like, oh my God, I hope, like, if you find out that he did come, and then you'll think that I wanted him there and I didn't want you. And I was like, oh, I felt so stressed. And then you were so great. You were just like, babe, it's fine. Like, don't worry. Like, you've said how you feel and you've been open with me. It's completely fine. And that meant so much, because I think during grief or any kind of really traumatic experience, you just need people to understand that you just don't have, it's going to be a one-way street for a while.
100% agree with you. And that's the thing, like when you said that to me as well, I think I remember thinking, I don't know if I said it, but I remember thinking, even if you did want him there and not me, that's okay. Like, however you need to handle it, if like, because I do love you, like, I'm not going to dictate that. Like, grief is grief. Whatever you need is fine. And I think that's the thing, like a true friend or a good partner, whether or not that's what they want, if that's what you need, they will. If they can give you that, they will. And I think that's the balancing act. Like, when me and Erin were talking last night, I said to her, I can't see myself getting past this reaction very quickly. Like, I am a fast learner, and I'm trying my best on everything, and I always get there. But what's been happening is she interrogates me, and I know there's a reason why she's asking all these questions. But because I don't know what it is, my mind panics and I assume I'm in trouble. And so then I start getting defensive and wanting to fight because I'm thinking that she's trying to build a case against me for some reason, or it's the not knowing. Like, and it's a real like noisy head game for me. But basically, I can sense she's trying to get to the bottom of something, but I don't know what the something is. So instead of just me saying, what are you trying to figure out, which is what I can work on, I start panicking and wondering what she's trying to do and freaking out, and then I start fighting it. And so I said to her, I will work on this, and I'm gonna, but so Aussie, I'm gonna, but I was like, this was a big thing for me because normally I don't ask someone to do something, but I said, I will work on that, and I can see that is my fault, but if you can also work on not approaching it that way, I'd really appreciate it because this is very, very stressful for me. So like if you could potentially just say, for example, the thing was last night, she didn't want to drive me to the city at 4 a.m. and me miss my train. That's what it was all coming down to, because I am a little bit scattered sometimes, right? And rushed, and I don't plan things properly, and I do miss lots of trains. So fair enough. But what she could have said is, I'm worried about you missing the train tomorrow. Is everything organised? That's it. Rather than like, what's the ticket? What time are you going? Have you packed your bag? It feels so stressful. So anyway, we worked it out.
And micromanaging a bit, like.
Oh yeah,
like
horrible.
It feels like interfering maybe instead of being helpful. It feels like a bit controlling.
Yes, and I'm like, you think I've traveled the world without you before I met you? Like, I'm alive. Like, I get so defensive and annoyed. I'm like, I feel like she's patronizing me. I feel like she thinks I'm an idiot, like all that. So I said to her, I was like, look, it's fair enough that you're worried about driving me and missing the train. Like, that is reasonable. So yes. And anyway, so we got there. But it was cool because I actually said I would like you to work on something too. Like, I don't feel like this should all be on me because it's such a stressful. It makes me feel so bad. I was like, I'm happy to make this go away because I don't like feeling like that. But if it can go away quicker, can you help me as well? And I actually asked that, please, can we both do something? And she was like, yep, no problems. And then today she texted me. She's like, I'm going to work on not being an interrogator. I was like, thank you.
Isn't that interesting though? Like as soon as I think taking responsibility for your own actions, I think it's a really great way to show anyone that you care about and genuinely want to have a relationship with that you care. It's just an action that you can take. It's not just a verbal thing. It's like, it's like an action that shows you're not saying it's all their fault. Otherwise, if you keep asking them to do something, it seems like you're saying it's their issue.
Yes.
When you're the one that is asking for change and needing change. So if you start by saying, this is where I'm going wrong, let's work on it together. What are you going to bring to the table?
Yeah.
Or I need this from you. If you can't do that, can you perhaps workshop an idea with me?
Yeah. How can we both make this better quicker as a team? Like, and it's funny actually, that's another thing that I've noticed with Erin. So I think Erin's the best relationship I've ever been in terms of emotional health. And I think that one of the other things that I've noticed is at the end of let's call it a conflict or disagreement or a tough talk, whatever you want to call it, at the end of one of those, when we've ironed it out, we both naturally will say, okay, I'm going to work on blah, blah, blah. And so, but we both have something. It's never one of us being in trouble and scolded. It's always both of us going, okay, well, I can also try this. And it feels so good because it doesn't feel like you're getting in trouble or that you're attacking someone. It's like just sort of ironing out the kinks. And we've been really good too doing this creatively. Like, and I guess in terms of the podcast, like, you know, there's business, there's creative collaborations, there's business partnerships, you know, all of them, whether it's relationships, parents, friends, it's all the same formula really, isn't it? So it's like when this week we were workshopping some things and then you said, you know, I'm not trying to be picky. I just know that we can make it great. I was like, yep. And then you're like, feel free to do the same with me. So then I did give it extra few thoughts and now it's so much better. So I think trusting that you are, like you said, you are working with or dealing with someone that you chose to deal with because you made a good choice and they're not out to get you is a big one. Big one.
Absolutely.
Like,
and like, sorry, go for it.
No. I was just going to say, I would never be mad at you if you had said, I want Wes here and not you, ever. Ever in a million years.
Oh, wow.
I just want you to know that. No way.
I mean, we might not even put this in the podcast, but Ayla was coming. So she's my best friend that's been in my life since I was 4, and she lives at the end of Dad's street. So she knew my dad her whole life, basically. She knows every side of everything. You know, she's more like a sister, because we would literally just stay for weeks on end at each other's houses, because our parents were like, well, you're like 200 meters away, so whatever, as long as someone's feeding you, like, great. Yeah. It was also the 90s, so, you know, less helicopter parenting. But I was happy. I didn't feel any pressure having her there. And she didn't even tell me she was coming. She just showed up at the funeral. But I kind of knew that it would have been weird if she didn't, I think. Yeah. But like, she was definitely there she was there for me, of course, but she was there for my dad because she knew my dad. So it wasn't unusual that she came. Whereas my friends who didn't know my dad,
I never heard
or maybe met him once. Yeah, never. Exactly. I kind of, in a weird way, leading up to the funeral, I didn't want to address me. I wanted to get past the funeral as the hurdle of like, this is the celebrating. I'm going to get emotional now.
Oh, it's okay.
This is the celebrating of Dad's life. And so I knew I was going to fall apart really bad. And so I just thought I just have to get to the point where I've done his funeral and I've done a good job. And I was worried that if my friends came, that I would fall apart. You know, when like someone gives you, when you're trying not to cry and someone gives you a hug and then you're done, you're like, don't fucking hug me. I'm trying to keep my shit together. It was kind of like that. It was like, if my friends come here, I will fucking lose it, and I won't actually, and I'm not sure at that point that I'll actually be able to pull everything together and give Dad the funeral I really want to give him.
It makes sense.
I'm glad everyone understood and like respected that. So yeah.
Oh, look, anyway. However you've got to do it. And that's the other thing. You're an only child, so you didn't have sibling support either. It was on you, really. You had to get it done, and plus grief. Like, it's a lot, and I'm so proud of you for how you handled all of that. It's incredible, B. You've inspired me in so many ways, but this is just another one. Like, honestly, like I just think the way you held it together, and the fact that you were able to look outside of yourself and say, okay, this is what I really do need, and this is probably I'm not exactly 100%, and there's a high chance that this is going to affect me in this way. Like, it's so admirable. You're so self-aware, and you're so
thank you,
amazingly strong, and not strong. It's the wrong word. Resilient, but also, like, I don't know. You're able to see things from a distance, and I think that that's really one of the traits I really admire about you, even in the middle of grief. So well done. Kudos.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I've never heard that, like, as a way of explaining that part of me before. Wow, thank you. Get things from a distance. It's not something I am recognizing myself.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it a lot. Like, even when we talked about politics before, and when, we've talked about, domestic violence, we talk about everything, and you're always able to pull it back. And even if you've had experiences in those areas, you're never stuck in your own emotion. You're always able to see things from a few perspectives. And I think maybe it's, I don't know, intelligence, or a life experience, DNA. I don't know how someone gets that, but you have that, and it's really cool. It's really cool.
I think that's, ironically, I think that's from my dad. My dad is like, it's probably a sort of compartmentalization. Like, I'm not sure if it comes from a good or a bad place in terms of like mental health and psyche. I do think it's a good skill. But I'm just saying, like, in case you're a psychologist watching this, might be going like,
that's caused because of
yeah, exactly. But it's something I always appreciated about my dad is, like, my dad didn't push his agenda on anyone. He always religion is a really good example. So he would say, I'm not religious, I'm interested. So I'm inquisitive. He would read about and have conversations with people of all different religious sect is not the word I'm looking for. That's way too specific. Diversities, let's say. And he was respectful and open to all of them. Yeah. And then he had his own things that he applied to his life. Like, he said if he was going to say he was anything, he'd say Buddhist, because he felt that aligned the best with him. He didn't do everything that Buddhists would do, but he felt that represented him the best. And I always really respected that ever since I was a kid, because it's like, a lot of the time I feel like we argue about stuff that is so personal. The reason that you're not connecting with someone else's opinion on something, unless we're talking about taking away someone's basic human rights and, legitimate right and wrong, that's a very different thing. But a lot of conversations get very heated simply because you didn't experience the same thing as the other person and you want them to agree with you because for you,
or
that's real.
You think you're right.
But for them, it's not real.
And you're not taking the time to go, hang on, their perspective might be different to mine, and their reality, what they truly think, the same as what I truly think, is different. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be the same. This is crazy. I didn't meet your dad, as I just said, but my dad, very, very similar. So he used to actually run a radio show or co-host a radio show, which was called Coexist. And he would talk to people from all different religions and try to find the commonalities rather than the differences. And so that's where I learned to think like that. And it's one of the things I respect so much about my dad too. So that's something that we have never worked out in 16 years that we share, is a mutual respect for our dads on a very specific thing, which is really cool.
That is really cool.
Really cool.
And look at you doing a podcast now. Like,
I know. And I feel like this is like, I hope we do keep all this in because it's a really nice tribute to your dad too, like, and mine. Like, my dad's a great man and I love him so much and he inspires me. I'm actually working on his portrait next, I've decided.
Oh, wow.
Just for fun. And I'm going to do yours too. Oh, so many portraits to paint. But yeah, I think this is really nice because we've never discovered this. I think we've talked a lot about our mums and their similarities and how it's affected our personalities.
Yeah.
But we've got a whole world of our dads that we've not touched on here, which is really cool.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And I think probably because we're girls, like, it's inevitable that you analyze your relationship with your mum because obviously being raised as a particular gender in our society means that you're going to have a lot of shared experience as what it means to be a woman, first of all. Yeah. And then there's the mother-daughter aspect, obviously, and the relationship and psychology with that. And then, just mums and daughters, if you've got a good relationship with your mum, and I mean, good is on a spectrum, like there's always going to be good and bad things about every relationship, like I'm sure we can come up with things that were bad about our relationships with our mums and good about our relationships with our mums. But I think you inevitably get very close and you're going to understand your mum in a way that you might never understand your dad. Yeah. But there's also something very special about a father-daughter relationship. Yes. I think you kind of take that for granted when you're younger. For me, at least, I think I took it for granted more than I took my relationship with my mum for granted, because mum and I talked about our relationship more and sort of we dissected it more. Dad and I didn't really dissect our relationship, but looking back, I can see actually what a big influence he's had on the direction my life has taken, how I express myself, what my sort of personal philosophies are. And I think that's a really interesting and nice thing to realize at this age when I feel very solid about myself.
And to give them credit for as well. Like, I feel the same. There's so many things about the way I think about things, the way I perceive things, the way I treat people that I've learned from my dad and my mum both. But you're right. It's like mum and I have talked about it more, I guess, whereas dad and I never really do. My mum always says to me, though, that I'm so much like my dad. So I think, we obviously we've got both, but it's really nice to recognize the positive things. Something massive I learned in therapy, now that this seems to be what we're doing today and I'm loving it, but
let's go for it.
Great. Another thing I learned in therapy, which was majorly helpful, was this. So I grew up in a very religious environment, for those listening. I don't think we've said that on anything yet. But if you've had a stalk of my website, you'll know. But yeah, I grew up and my parents and my brothers are all very nice people. I see all of us as victims of the religion in a lot of ways, and they don't necessarily see things that way, but that's my perspective. And there's a lot of us, so we all think differently about it. So I don't want to generalize or make the listeners think that my family are negative in any way. But I was raised in a very religious environment, and it was black and white. So in evangelical Pentecostal Christianity, everything is very black and white. There's no gray area at all. It's all right and wrong, good and bad. It's like you can't be married to someone who's not a non-believer. You don't, like, everything's very black and white.
Wow.
I don't even know how to articulate it enough. Like, it's, you know, whatever. Just believe me.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, so I grew up thinking that way. So what I've had to learn is that things can exist together. So someone can be mean to you one day, but still a good person. Because in my, like, black and white as a child fundamental years growing up thinking like that, what has happened as an adult is someone will be mean and then I'm like, oh, I can't trust them, they're bad. Like, or, you know what I mean? So like, okay. I will be very like quick to swing on someone. You might have noticed this over the years. Like, and it's mainly me trying to work out how to feel safe. Because I'm like, now they've done this. What does that mean? Now they've done this. What does that mean? Now they've done this. What does that mean? And it doesn't mean anything because, and it actually has only been a very recent thing I've finally understood. And Erin said to me something that really landed. She said to me, because I was being jealous at the start of a relationship with a girl she worked with. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to be jealous and I could feel myself being controlling. I didn't want to be controlling. So it was very stressful. And I said to her, I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm doing this, blah, blah, blah. She said to me, I told her the truth. I said, I'm aware I'm trying to control you and I don't want it. And I don't know what to do. And she said, the fact that you can see that is amazing and it makes me want to stay with you. Don't worry. She's like, if it was 2 years in, we'd have an issue. She's like, but you're still learning to trust me. It's all good. And then she said, we are all capable of everything.
Oh, I remember you sending me a message of her saying that to you. That is a like very wise thing to just throw out there.
I know. I was like, oh my God, that is so good. She's like, we are all capable of everything. So don't be so hard on yourself for a start, but definitely don't be so hard on others. And I was like, oh, it's so true. Like good and bad. Like I can be annoyed at a friend, but love them at the same time. One doesn't cancel the other out, you know, like, or I can feel disappointed in a situation, but still want to be in that situation, or, you know, hate the day at work, but still love the job. Like all these things can and need to coexist. Like everything actually, it's like that polarity thing again. Like if you don't know what polarity is, we're going to put a link.
Yeah, great idea.
I'm going to put a link if that's okay. Cause it was such a cool, my alarm's went off. Sorry. Done. My wind down and go to bed alarm. I never listened to it.
I thought you said my wine time.
Much better.
My wine time alarm.
Wine time.
Oh dear.
Anyway.
Sorry, link. Yeah.
No, you're right. I was just saying, I'm just rambling as usual. Just going on a tangent here about how I have learnt recently and I've learnt it now, that nothing is black or white actually. So like recognizing that what I was taught to believe is not my experience of reality now, and it's not the most useful way of thinking for me to have actual peace and happiness. Yeah. Like whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant. It's just not helpful. Like having realized that now, it's so nice because I can go, okay, they might be having that moment, but I also can have that moment. And it makes it really easy to forgive people, but not in like I'm forgiving you because I'm the hero way. It's like, well, we're all flawed and we're all complicated. So it changes. Like now I've got to figure out how I judge who's around me, and it's a whole different set of rules. It's taken years to work all this out. Like, oh my God, deconstructing a whole religion, oh my God, it's a lot. Like,
oh God, babes. Yeah.
But it's good fun. Like now that I feel like I've gotten through it, it's a lot to think about.
I'm glad that you're at a point where you can see it as fun.
It's an immense challenge, but, you know, it's like now I'm kind of bored because I've got nothing to think about, but there's always something new to go. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay.
Oh my God. Are you emotionally healthy and now looking for more trauma?
Where's the Real Housewives of Dubai?
Yeah, thank God we can watch someone else go through their personal journey.
Totally.
I wanted to quickly, because I think this has been such an amazing conversation. And for those of you, like some of you may have automatically connected with it. Some of you might be like, this is what the fuck? What has this got to do with anything? For me, I feel like this relates back so strongly to being a creative, because I truly believe that your best creativity comes out of personal growth. Like there's so much talk about tortured artists and like people making albums about breakups and blah, blah, blah. But I was thinking about this the other day, is that I personally don't make good creative content and express myself creatively when I'm going through something difficult. So for example, with losing my dad, I didn't really produce much that I would consider to be particularly, that I'm particularly proud of, or that I feel like represented me in the past 12 months. I really took a hiatus, even though you might have seen me online. I was just keeping the ball rolling. I was not really putting myself into that. And I thought, but you know what? Say Adele, for example. We know that Adele likes to make albums about breakups, but she makes them after she's gone through the experience, she's healed, and then she makes something in reflection, and it's sort of a healing process, and it's a personal growth journey. And I think if you're struggling with some sort of block as a creative, I never think it hurts to look into yourself and be like, where is this block coming from? Because it's probably got something to do with a trauma or a block that is a general block in your life and not just a creative block. And I think that's where something like the Artist's Way is so helpful, is because it doesn't make you really work on your art, apart from saying that you need to do something creative every day and express yourself creatively every day. Not do your best work, just do some creative work every day. But all of the steps in the book are about you delving inside and looking at what about your personal life and your psyche and your emotional history needs to be worked on to actually allow you to create freely. And so that's why I think a lot of the stuff we've talked about today, despite how like sort of D&M and heavy it might be, these are the things that we've gone through and worked on that has allowed us to actually continue being creative. Because I think for me, if I hadn't worked on this personal stuff, I probably would have stopped being a musician. I would have stopped being a YouTuber, because I would have let the personal keep using the word trauma. Like I feel like it's such a like trendy code word of the moment, but it's the only way I know how to describe it. The trauma in my life and stresses, I would have let them erase or take over what is so important for me, which is expressing myself creatively. So yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think that's I think that's great. And I completely agree. Like for me anyway, when you were talking just then, I actually got goosebumps. Like I was like, ooh, getting excited, because I don't actually think I've ever until now created in a healthy emotional state.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really excited. Like I have been for the past year. And everything I've made is so different and so exciting and new. And it's like everything I've ever done has become merged into one. And I've always wanted that to happen, and it's happened. And I'm like, oh, this is a cool thing. I'm having fun with it. And so I feel it feels easy and light, and I love it. And I like other people love it, and it's easier. And so when you were talking, I was getting excited because I was thinking I've actually created a lot of things that I feel were good, and I'm proud of them. Like I look at them and I'm like, I did a great job with that. Like Erasers at the Owl and Cat Theatre was an amazing play, and I nailed that. But I was not eating, not sleeping, stressed, confused. I can barely remember anything, but I still know that it worked and it was good. So I'm excited to see where my creativity is going to go now, because I'm like, if I could pull that off in that state, like, this sounds so arrogant, but I don't mean it to at all.
No, it doesn't.
I hope not. But I'm just excited because I think, I wonder what I can do when I've slept and I've eaten and I'm in a loving relationship. You know what I mean? Like, and I just want to say my last relationship was very loving. I'm not trying to discredit her in any way. And she's an amazing creative musician that I love still to this day, but we just weren't right for each other. But that aside, I just am excited because I think, it makes sense if you're healthy and happy, of course, like whether it's business or art, there's all the same things with business. Like there's this negative reinforcement that we believe that you have to grind and hustle and you've got to sell your house and mortgage everything and bare your soul and die at the hands of your business. And I work 25 hours a day. It's like, maybe some people do that and that has worked for them, but also there's people who don't do that. And, learning to rewire negative self-beliefs is what we've both been focusing on with the Artist Way. And I think whether it's, business, relationships, creativity, if you are happy and you're prioritizing yourself, of course you're going to do better work. Like, think about when you go to a job. If you're in a good mood and you've had a good night's sleep and you go to the job you don't really want to be at, it's manageable. If you've had a bad night's sleep and you haven't eaten lunch, you want to rip everyone's face off. Like, it's got to be the same thing, right?
Relatable. Yes, absolutely. I love that. I think, I mean, I kind of don't want to take it any further because I think that's a really great rounding out and a really great piece of advice.
Good place to wrap it up.
Yeah. And also I think it represents us really well, but I hope that it's a really positive message to send you guys, because we don't just want to like have an emotional dumping session on you. We're like, we're trying to like give back in some way. So I hope
we're trying to be open.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's not, let us know. But I agree. I think being vulnerable with all of your creativity, especially, is imperative. I think people want to see your truth and your experiences, and having the time to live your life, actually do things, so then you can reflect on it to make art. That's what makes it. Like, otherwise, what have you got to talk about? Like, if you're not actually doing anything, So I think that's what our intention is with sharing our whole lives and being so open, is to show what's working for us. It is working for us, which is really cool, because when we first met, we were both retail managers full time.
And in very unhappy relationships.
Yeah. We weren't being treated the way that we wanted to be or deserved to be. We weren't treating ourselves the way we deserve to be. We weren't working in a job that either of us liked. We weren't living. You were living in a cool place, at least, location-wise. Oh, wait, no, not at the very beginning. We weren't even living in places we liked. We weren't living anywhere we liked. Like, literally.
Mine looked aesthetically good. It wasn't really good.
Oh, yeah. Everything we do is going to look cool. We can do that with our eyes shut. If nothing else, we are decorating. But yeah, like, in fact, like, so for me, it's like, okay, if we can share, like, for younger or different people that are different points, whatever it is, if it resonates, great. Because if I had have heard, what I now know earlier, it would have been really handy. So that's where my feeling is with sharing this stuff. It's like, there's the entertainment factor. Hopefully it's something you can listen to and enjoy and have a laugh. But also, if we can do it, you can do it. That's kind of how I feel. It's like we managed to make the changes. We're both in happy relationships. We're both living exactly where we want to be. We're both doing what we want to do. And yeah, it's hard, but we've made huge steps in the right direction. And I think that's we're trying to show you how. And it's not always about what you see on Instagram, and it's not always about the awards you get. Like, I've had great reviews from critics. That's not how I got there,
I think there's a sort of a sense of, I don't want to say responsibility, because I don't think it's fair to put that level of pressure on people. But I do feel like, when I was in my 20s, I could relate to art that was like very tortured and like shared people's emotional turmoil and like how sad they were or how angry they were or whatever. And maybe that's also about the age, like, I think the 20s is about realizing how you feel, and then maybe your 30s is actually about working on it and improving your life. Like, you've got to go through the darkness to come out of it. But I don't feel like now that I want to put stuff out in the world just because it's creative. Sure, it might be expressing something real that happened to me in the past, but I'm not sure that I want to encourage people to stay in that headspace when I could be encouraging them through my creativity to find happiness and be as healthy, physically and mentally as possible. And I'm not trying to be arrogant about this. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just saying that if I found something that works and that could possibly be helpful to someone else, why would I not want to share that? Why would I want to gatekeep that,
Could not agree more. And just nailed it.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us once again. And don't forget, the links that we talked about, or the things that we talked about in the show, are linked down below. You can come and follow us on our social media, Tangents Irrelevant Podcast or Tangents Irrelevant. Everything is down below. Thanks, guys. Love you.